I would love to hear, what is your age gap between your 2 kids or 3 kids or many kids, and what do you love about it and what do you not love about it, so that other people who are like trying to figure out the ideal age gap can go in the comments and see different pros and cons. Hey guys, my name is Shayla. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, I talk about motherhood, I talk about pregnancy, we do things kind of natural, kind of hippie, granola. If you're into that sort of thing, please subscribe. I've got tons of videos about cloth diapering and elimination communication and baby-led weaning, breastfeeding, and all sorts of stuff. I'm also on Instagram, HEYSHAYLA, and I have a podcast, HEYSHAYLA, where I interview all the gurus about all the things that I talked about. It's pretty great. Today I'm going to talk about, the age gap, because when we were thinking about getting pregnant with my second, I was like hyper focused on what should the age gap be. And first of all, you can't even plan that. Like, you might not get pregnant, you might have a miscarriage. We've had a few. Think about your ideal, right? Because you want to be hopeful. You want to think that you can like do the correct age group. So I'm asking literally all my friends, like, how far apart are your kids? Do you like the age gap? How far apart are your kids? Do you like the age gap? My girls are exactly, almost to the day, they're a week apart, but they're 2 years apart. But their birthdays are a week apart. I would have had a smaller gap had I done it the way I wanted to. I wanted to have Irish twins. I don't know if that's politically correct. That's what I know the term, but it's 2 babies under 1 year old. So when I was like, I don't know, 3 months pregnant, I was like, you good? You good for a second? Should we try? Should we try for a second? My body was like, no, we're not good. In fact, we're not gonna get our period back until 13 months postpartum when you intentionally night wean. I have a video about how we night weaned our co-sleeping toddler at 13 months. Anyway, okay, I would really like our kids to be somewhat close together, so let's try night weaning. And then we ended up nursing until like 18 months, but we night weaned at 13 and I got my period back. I ended up getting pregnant, like I had 1 period and then I got pregnant. You can get pregnant before you get your period. Everyone's gonna say that. That's true. You ovulate before you have your period, but I didn't. So my kids ended up 2 years apart, like so much that my midwife was like, so if we're getting close to your daughter's birthday, do you want to induce? And I was like, no. I do not want to induce at all, if possible, especially not for a birthday. What this video is going to be about is pros and cons of the 2-year age gap. I have my notes here. I want to start by saying this decision is going to be different for everybody. So I just want to give you some of like the pros and cons so you can be like, oh, I don't care about that. Oh, yes, that's what I need. I don't know, just some factors to think about. My sister and I are 16 months apart. I loved the age gap. We're like a year apart in school. She dated someone in my grade, so we went to the same parties. We weren't like part of the same friend group. She still had friends in her grade and I had friends in my grade, but like we would go to the same, we were in the same kind of group, and I thought it was really fun. Like, we were best of friends and worst of enemies. It was just fun having her so close. We get to share clothes, I don't know, go through the same things around the same time. It was just good. And then my husband's sister and him are about the same age apart too, so we were both like, yeah, that's a good age gap. 16 months. Then when I got there, I was like, that would have been super, super gnarly. And I actually thought, because I night weaned and then got pregnant and then was just so overwhelmed, I was like, maybe my body knew best. Maybe I'm this hippy dippy person who should have followed what my body was trying to say of like, nope, we're not ready yet. Anyway, let's start with the cons. The cons of having them 2 years apart is that their birthdays are like gonna be like so close together. So do you do birthday parties together or apart? Obviously, we've only had 1 birthday that we've had to do that because my daughter just turned 1, and we did them together for sure. But that's always like a debate, like what are we gonna do moving forward? And I think we'll just play it by ear, see what they want to do, see how the days fall, whatever. When my daughter was 2, she like understood that there was a baby, but she didn't fully understand like what it meant, and she wasn't old enough necessarily to help grab a diaper or know why she was gonna sit in the living room while I put the baby to sleep or different things like that. So it was a little bit early as far as understanding, but for me it worked out because the first like 6 months of baby's life, she was on me. She took contact naps. By the time she was like 2.5, she really understood like what was going on, and so I'd be like, okay, you're gonna watch a show, I'm gonna put the baby down, and she was totally fine with it. And at 2.5, I felt good about that. I have a friend who would put a monitor in the living room to watch the toddler while she was putting the baby to sleep. Some people will have like nursing specific toys, so the toddler comes in and plays with the toys. My kid's way too loud for that, so I was like, you cannot be in here. But at 2.5, I felt comfortable having her in the living room. So if you want that from the get, maybe wait a little longer. I liked the 2-year gap because I felt like in the beginning I didn't necessarily need them to be separate anyway, because she was just napping on me. Another really serious thing to consider. So my first is 1 and has not been in daycare yet. She just stays at home with me, or we get a babysitter or something if I need to work. But if you have to put 2 kids in daycare at the same time, I have a friend who pays $3,000 a month for 2 children, a toddler and a baby. That's a lot. If you are not able to stay home financially, it might make sense to have one get into preschool or like into school before you start again. I know somebody who's got 3 kids and each are 4.5 years apart. That's too big of a gap in my mind, like for what I wanted with my family. And she's like, it's fantastic because I get to enjoy them and only them for those 4.5 years before another baby comes. She loves it. So that's another perspective of just like enjoying the kids. I wanted mine to kind of like grow up together and be really close siblings, like me and my sister. But I also love the idea of just being able to like be super involved with the one kid. Those are all the cons because I try to focus on the pros. So here are the pros. My kids are born in the springtime. I think springtime babies are perfect. Early spring, super late winter, because you're gonna do like a month of hibernating and then you're gonna want to get outside. And so it's nice to be able to get outside with the baby. Illnesses are in the winter time, so you don't really have that. So when I had one in the springtime, I was like, we're gonna have another one in the springtime. I wanted springtime babies, so that ended up that they were 2 years apart and had their birthdays around the same time of year. This is also really dumb, but like I love that their birthdays are almost the same because I know how old they are at all times. 1 and 3, 1.5, 3.5, 2 and 4. They're exactly 2 years apart, so I don't have to be like, oh, what month are we in? Oh, there's a year. I'm sure it's not that complicated, but I think it's really easy. So there you go. The pros of doing a joint birthday party at 2 years is that you could do like a vacation, spring break. But we bought them this huge climbing dome, so we got to give them a big giant gift for their birthday because it was combined, so that's kind of cool. And when they're close enough together, like 2 years or under, or 2.5 or under, I feel like they can play together. And if you have a kid that's like 4 and a newborn, tell me this, because I feel like a 4-year-old could also play with younger kids. It would just be a different kind of play, more of like a directed and follow versus like playing together. So I don't really know that this is one, but in my mind, when they're close together, they get to like play the same type of things and they're interested in the same type of things at the same time, and that just makes sense to me. If you have a 5-year-old and a baby, it's still probably fine. With the 2-year gap, for me, babies start to get easier. I hesitate to even say that. The first year for me is just an absolute shit show. Like every 5 days, they're changing their nap schedule. They have a sleep progression or regression. They have different preferences of food. They're cluster feeding, and then they're like on a feeding strike. At one, things start to like normalize a little bit. We've got a little bit more consistent nap schedule, which isn't the case with my second right now, but we're getting there. There's just more predictable things, and so it feels a little easier. So then from 1 to 2 for your first, you've got that year to just like enjoy it, kind of coast a little bit. Granted, you're pregnant, so you're doing like the first trimester with a toddler, which for us was a lot of screen time because I just was not feeling well at all. But I just feel like there was this ease. So we were thinking about having a third, like same, so that they would be born within the like spring months. And I was like, okay, got one. Now here's my year of like chill, where I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and it's just not having an infant before I am about to have an infant. And recently I think we're gonna wait to have a third. I'll do a whole video on this because there's a lot of thought that's going into this. In my mind, I need to have them around the same time each year. So I'm like, well, if we don't do it now, we have to wait another year, which feels honestly really stress relieving for me. So it's not like every month I need to decide. And your body kind of gets to recover. Granted, I was breastfeeding while I was pregnant, then stopped breastfeeding, then was still pregnant, and then had the baby and then breastfeeding. So I've either been breastfeeding or pregnant for the past 4 years. Oh, here's another bonus of the 2-year gap is that you get to do well visits together. So when you go to the doctor, you're like, hey, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old and they need a well visit for them. Can we just wrap it up in one appointment? And they're like, sure, sweet. And then with the 2-year gap, you're not totally out of the baby stage. Like 4.5, your kid's almost in kindergarten or pre-K, I don't know, they're like getting ready to go to school, and then you start the newborn phase all over again. At 2, they're like maybe just starting to potty train, you're still napping. I still feel like you're in like the little people phase. I feel like the little people phase ends at like 4 or 5, and you're still just figuring it all out, and it makes it a lot more chaotic, and to me that's like a sprint. Like we're gonna just compress this, make it really hard for a shorter time instead of like just having it be a little bit easier and like much longer. I wouldn't say a marathon is easier and longer, but just it's a longer stretched out of the hard work. Yeah, but I do feel like at 2, she did sort of understand, like I was pregnant, we were going to name my second, whose name is Esme, we were going to name her Romy, and so we called her Ro Baby in my tummy. Ro Baby, Ro Baby. And then when she came out, my oldest kept calling the baby Row Baby. So she understood that there was a baby in my tummy, now there's a baby outside. I don't, like, to me that doesn't make any sense, but I'm impressed that she figured that out. So she's old enough to kind of get it and like grow into the sibling role. And now she's 3 and Esme's 1, and they're like best friends, and I love it. So if we do wait, there might be a 3-year gap between the next, and that to me is a little bit much, but like, I just need a little mental break. I don't know. I hope this was helpful. I think that if you end up having kids closer in age, I think it's a lot more work for you. Like my mom said that we were 16 months apart. She's like, there were some times that I was like, you are safe in your crib. You are safe in your crib. You're both screaming your heads off. I'm going to go sit on the porch, and I just need like a minute to myself to just collect myself, because it's 2 little babies. And then if you have them further apart, you have helpers. It just really depends on what you want. Can you do 2 kids in daycare? Can you stay at home? Should you space them out a little bit so you're not paying for 2 kids in daycare? Do you want the sibling bond really strong? Do you want your bond with them really strong? Does the close in age matter to you? Like, I was never ready for number 2. I just knew that that's what I wanted. I want my kids close together, so I'm not thinking about whether or not I'm ready. I'm just going for it. And that's how I was feeling with 3. I'm like, no, I'm not ready for 3. I'm drowning. Let's just do it. And then Seth and I talked, and we're like, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should just enjoy what we have right now, and then reevaluate in a year or 2, and we can figure that out. And if we don't, we don't. And if we do, we do. And like, that was just like so much stress. To be honest, there is no ideal. It's gonna be different for each individual family and their circumstances, and there will be pros and cons to every single one. So don't stress too much. Enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.